computer. So welcome everyone. I am so excited for today's guest, a gorgeous friend of mine who's way across in the US. She's joining us from Portland, Oregon this morning, Theora Moench. And we met, I had the pleasure of meeting her in the most glorious of situations. We were both on a deep dive spiritual journey with the Tony Robbins Platinum Partners. And we actually first met at the airport, right?
I don't know. My most vivid memories are being on the boats in Varanasi.
Oh, the boats were incredible.
Yeah.
Varanasi. Like, maybe we get to talk around the dichotomy of Varanasi. I know that we're going to flow today, which I love. Not every guest wants to do that. And I'm so excited to have you on because what struck me immediately about you was you were fitting a lot in life. You had already accomplished so much. How old are you?
I am 31.
Did you always say you were going to be one of these people that always know your age and you would never have to look up and work it out in your head how old you are?
I don't even know if I've misquoted my age to a security guard at a music festival before. I was like, I'm 32. And my partner was like, no, you're not. I was like, oh.
I do that regularly now too. I have to add it up. And I remember looking at old people going, I can't believe they have to add up their age. I'm never going to do that, right? Yeah. You have just created and achieved so much in life. And let's start with, tell us your story. Who are you? What are you passionate about? And how did you come to be in Varanasi all of those years ago as a seeker?
Yeah. So I think like most people, it was a winding road. And I really started out kind of with like a humanitarian lean. I remember when I was 16, I said, I'm going to work in international community development. And I actually did end up doing that the year after university. But saw really quickly that people who are doing some of the best work on the planet get paid the least. And I really quickly saw this future lining up in front of me where I was going to have to really choose between the comfort and stability and thriving of my own family, or doing work that, really felt connected from a place of mission. And so thank heavens I grew up with like a dad who was into personal development. I was like, well, maybe you could have both. So I started looking for work that I could do in the private sector versus nonprofit, that was like good work, but also there was going to be some upward mobility. And the man I worked for, it was a wellness and a clinic. He's the one who actually introduced me to Tony Robbins. So he funded my first conference with Tony Robbins. I met Linda through the Tony Robbins community. And that sent me down a whole rabbit hole. So where I realized like, oh my gosh, maybe I could be an entrepreneur, because I'm the daughter of academics. And I didn't grow up around really like in it. I would say like culture jamming thought. That's not really how we were. Very like data and research and a healthy dose of skepticism, which I think is all really great. And I'm really appreciative that I have that critical eye. But everyone in my family had success because they had followed the track laid out for them. They'd followed the academic track, or my grandfather took over his father's law firm, that sort of thing. So there wasn't really this sort of like breaking out, being a black sheep, pursuing your own harebrained ideas and schemes. And that's what I really got exposed to, starting with the Tony Robbins world. And through a variety of like professional experiments, I finally landed on really embracing what is it like to create a business around this thing that I've had an uncanny curiosity around ever since I was very young. I read my first relationship book when I was 17. It was called A Fine Romance, and I can't remember. I should look up what her name, but because I was like, why do girls at the time, right? Like, why do girls and boys, why are they so different? why do we act so differently in relationship? Why do we act so differently in friendship? Why am I unclear as to like what's going on in this dynamic? And I also remember looking around, and most of my friends' parents were divorced, and the parents that were still married didn't really seem happy. And my mom passed away when I was little. And so not only did I not necessarily grow up with a model that I could assume was normal, like this is what a partnership looks like, but I also looked around and saw people who didn't seem happy in or out. I was like, there's got to be a different way to do this, or like, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Since then, I've like collected and found a lot of evidence of really, really remarkable couples. But I think from a very young age, there was a just like a curiosity seated within me. And fast forward 15, 16 years, here I am creating a company that's really all about what is it like to create relationship on purpose and really understand what are there are predictable building blocks to creating healthy, dynamic, respectful, lasting, fulfilling partnerships.
Oh, exciting.
It's kind of all over the place, but yeah.
No, I love that. So maybe you can take us through some of that. So I just was like, wow, that sounds fascinating. So first of all, the one thing that I heard that I think a lot of us who we're a natural nurturer, we want to make a difference, we can often buy into the story, and there is a lot of reference for it, that if you're going to go save the world, you're not really going to get paid. Mm-hmm. You're going to be, out on the sea shepherd, you're going to be, up in trees, and you are going to live on rice and beans, but you are really going to make a big worthy impact. So it was almost like this sacrifice, right? And the sellout, because I did politics at university, and I did justice, rights and difference and environmentalism. And I made a really conscious choice at your same age of, I can't do this. It's just too depressing for me. The Amazon is going to be gone. I can't fight this fight. I just felt defeated before I even started. And so I did this radical, okay, I'm going corporate. And gosh, that was a life of pain there for a while as well. So I think that's really interesting that you had your dad going, because he'd grown up in personal development. He's like, well, what if you can have both? Maybe it's and. Maybe you can make a giant impact and, be well rewarded. And what I know now to be true about money and abundance is it's a reflection of how much value we're adding, right? And there's a lot of people out there with really messy money stories. Mm-hmm. Do you find this, like, would you agree on that? Mine were pretty good until I was in a room of many multimillionaires with much better, healthier money stories than me. And that's when I saw the work that I yet had to do, of where I was settling and saying, well, I'm okay up until here. And then, oh gosh, maybe I better open an orphanage and then I'll be a good person. Do you know what I started going, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to do that. So I love our background always shapes us of what we're curious in. And so you've been on this quest about relationships, and let's dive into what you just said then. I felt so like it was so exciting, and I'm sure everyone else watching too, was there is predictable building blocks. There's guys on here, their blueprint, they like predictable building blocks. Give me the map, give me the steps. What are they? What can you share with us about that? Let's just go straight in there.
Yeah, we can do a little taster. And the first thing I want is, so I'll use, cool. I'm like, where do we start? I love this. Okay, so I like to think about that. There's really sort of three buckets when it comes to relationship, and my playground is romantic relationship for sure, but this really applies to all kinds of relationships. And I would say there's the biological, which is can kind of be summed up as evolutionary biology. Which does inform social conditioning, as well as I would say how trauma is stored in the body. That's a big focal point. We all have traumas. It's quite literally mapped out in our nervous system. And oftentimes our nervous system is making decisions on our behalf before we get a chance to actually consider what's going on and make something that might be in our higher interest. So first is biological. Second is the energetic. And so I don't know if your community is super familiar with like terms like being a vibrational match or frequency or like quantum physics, right?
Yeah,
But as
I get that.
yeah, and this stuff is actually quite measurable in that once you know where it is that you're going, you can constantly have a reference point to check, like, actually, am I showing up in service to that? And there's also the masculine feminine dynamics, which in my lineage of learning, we don't use the terms masculine feminine, we say alpha omega, and part of that is to decouple it a little bit from gender, because these are actually energies that are at play not just in humans but in environments, in objects, in group dynamics, right? And we all contain both, and we all can play a spectrum. Like, instead of each having like two notes available to us, think of it like a piano. And the more agility you have to inhabit those energies, the more fulfillment and the more dynamism and the more dimensionality you get to experience in your relationships. And then the third is the practical, right? Like, literally, like, everyone that comes to me when we're doing some audits around, like, we're kind of doing autopsies on the relationships that have come before. One of the things, or not, I shouldn't say everyone, but I often hear the phrases like, it all comes down to communication, doesn't it? Or, I want to be with a good communicator. And then most people are terrible communicators, right? Like, they'll be like, I don't like conflict. And I'm like, it sounds like you don't like having conversations. You know what I mean? So, so some of it is literally just equipping people with practical tools. Like, what is a boundary? It doesn't always have to be drawn once it's been violated, right? It could be creating a boundary, AKA an agreement, ahead of time, because you slowed down enough to get clear on what was the experience you wanted to have. And you actually looped everybody who needs to know into it, so that there wasn't a boundary that ever had to get crossed in the first place. So there's like a set of practical tools. So when I say building blocks, I would say they tend to fall into those three categories. And once you start to play in those spaces, you become, like, I think agility is the best word. You become a more agile participant in this thing that you're creating. Because think about, okay, guys, I'm going to get so weird and geeky. So I guess if you want to
Let's
ask
do it.
questions,
We
okay, I'm just going to rock and roll. I'm just going to treat y'all.
Come on, hands up. Come on.
Oh my God. I really like to think of a relationship as actually like a third entity. So there's me, there's my partner, and then there's actually this like third entity that kind of has its own need profile. Because if I come in and I'm just serving myself, we start to get into a transactional dynamic or a sacrificial dynamic. So when you mentioned sacrifice, I currently live with the belief that sacrifice has no place in a partnership. And I know a lot of people who sacrificed a lot can oftentimes push back on that. But oftentimes there's a lot of romanticizing of martyrdom. And I think in partnership, sacrifice has a really corrosive effect on our ability to show up generously and open-heartedly with one another.
I think let's park right there. I just got goosebumps because this is a big topic, especially for women. It's definitely a huge archetype for me that I didn't know even how to be aware of, let alone how to, start tracking and measuring it and dissolving it, because it kept popping up everywhere. It would pop up in all my relationships because it's what I had learned. And I think a lot of us, the generations of strong women before us, there was, and I grew up Catholic. So then you pop in religion, cultural, dynamics, that it's good to sacrifice. Then you'll be worthy. Oh, look at all this stuff that I'm giving up, and then I can be worthy, and then you might love me. And it's kind of the crumbs. It's really honorable to settle for the crumbs kind of thing. And it was in India that just like, I got a smack in the head on that about, different outcomes in my life, especially in being a mother. I didn't want that pattern to repeat for my kids. And I saw the consequences of tracking and measuring in a relationship. you know, I know for James and I we'll say, it's like tagging. It's like, well, I did this, I did that. We're conscious when we drop to that. Oh gosh, this is getting very low energy, and we're not, you know, filling our own cup when we start to look at what's being done for us and not done for us. So I think that is a really great topic. And so what you've said is, you realize how toxic that is, and low vibe, nothing good can come of that. So you're saying we just don't have that in your personal relationship. Is that right?
Yeah. And I think it's also important to say there's a lot of social conditioning for men to sacrifice too. It just looks quite different. And part of that is because we just fundamentally don't understand that there are differences, and I'm not trying to like assign gender due to biology, but like there are differences on how our brains process data and how we communicate. Okay, I'm gonna there's so many open loops. Like an example, if you hear a bunch of women hanging out together, we tend to be like blah, 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 like, right? And we're constantly layering communication over each other. We don't experience that for the most part as interruption. We just experience that as conversation. But how many of the women here have had like a partner, it could be a brother, it could be a father, where you feel like you're just participating and enjoying the conversation, and they're getting annoyed with you because they feel interrupted. Yeah, that's because usually the way that men communicate with each other is one of them talks, and then he stops talking, and then the other one talks, and they take turns, right? And that's what conversation feels like to them for the most part, right? Some of this is conditioned, some of it's not, and we can obviously like learn to understand the differences, but the number of people I've told that to who are like, oh my God, or like when I got to explain to my partner, I was like, hey, I want you to see, like, when I slow down and I'm quiet and I'm like there and I'm giving you my full presence, that's a learned skill. That is not like a natural communication behavior. And he was like, whoa, thank you so much. I really appreciate you putting all that effort. I was like, thank you. Right. So we started to be able to create this understanding that like we actually do speak slightly different languages.
So because I love bringing this into the practical. Everyone's at home going, oh, I have this. Now I'm aware of it. What do I do? We have a talking stick, a talking spoon. So it's almost like men have an invisible one that's just the code. They have an invisible talking stick that I listen and then you reply, and then and you're right, us girls are like this. There's 3 girls in the house plus 2 female dogs. So there's really 5 of us. And then there's 2 boys. And there's a lot of talking over in our house, like a lot. So how can we as females kind of remember to bring that in and be present without actually holding a stick? How did you learn that skill? What could we do to start being aware of it?
Well, the first thing that I would have you do is I would have you go to the men in your life who feel interrupted by you, and really get clear, what is the benefit to them? What does it provide them when you fully listen and let them actually complete their thoughts and share the truth that they're trying to share with you? If they're given the freedom to actually give all of that to you, like what would that do for them? Because I think that once you hear the way that it will make him feel and the impact it will have on him, you'll have a lot more leverage for showing up that way. Because of the way it will serve the men in your life.
That's beautiful. That's such great advice. Would you agree, ladies? Because James had communicated this to me. I think that I'm amazing at my multitasking. I can listen to what he's saying, and I can do a post, and I can follow up on the whatever. To him, that feels like I'm not present, of course. When I stop and see it through his eyes, of course that feels crazy and scattered and not present at all. And I'm listening. It's like I have 10 tabs open on the screen, and I really can do a little bit of each. And what you've reminded me of is, what's the benefit? What a great question. What's the benefit of absolutely stopping and being fully present, so he then can gather the thoughts? He can then be very present in his communication, which most of us women are just like, talk to me. more than
Mhm.
the sentence. Right? So I love that question. I think that that is a piece of gold. Thank you. Okay, continue.
There's also ways that he could set you up for success to know when it's one of those moments. Cause it's not always those moments, right? Like it could just be like a logistical, who's grabbing the kids from school today. But, so I love code words. I love code words, and you can create them unique to your relationships, but where it's like it's an agreed upon meaning. So um, one of ours is, hey, I have like, or say like, can we can we do straight talk is what it's called. And that means that there's something on my heart, right? And like I need your full presence. Because sometimes in those moments you don't have the wherewithal or the eloquence to be like, my love, can you be fully, like you're just like raw, right? Like there's a tsunami or a wave, right? So in that instance it could be like you guys come up with the code word that he can say to you that lets you know, hey, right now I need you to not be multitasking. I need you to do your best to give me your full focus and attention.
Oh, I love that. A code word. So then
Yeah.
I can, because I'm so in that and it gets me far. I like that about me, but it's
Yeah.
not valuable when it's relationship time.
Yeah.
And I'm really good at here's relationship time. It's between this time and this time during the day and it's scheduled. But
Yeah.
that doesn't work in the daytime because we work from home together. And of
Yeah.
course, you can't pre-schedule timing of straight talk.
Yeah.
So when it's needed, it's needed. This was so helpful. So thank you. I love code words. Okay,
Yeah.
where are we? Where to from here? I'm loving this. Who else is loving it?
I'm gonna circle back. Very,
Oh,
very omega
please.
of me. I'm gonna circle back to an open loop, which was I was talking about the third entity of a relationship and the dynamic of sacrifice and how I think sacrifice tends to create and sacrifice also is that transaction where like I'll give as long as you're giving, but if you stop giving, then I'm not going to get, right? It's conditional. Um, because what's so beautiful about really treating the relationship as its own entity is the relationship requires that you're both thriving, right? Because it's the sum of its parts. And so what's really beautiful is like when you ask, well, what does the relationship need? You'll come up with higher quality answers than, well, like, what do I need or what do they need? Because you really, and especially if both people are doing this, it oftentimes creates this dynamic of really just kind of like generously depositing into your relational bank with one another. And that's abundance. It's quite literally like the relational practice of abundance. But in that set of the relationship, when you ask, well, what does the relationship need? It's not going to ask you to sacrifice and stuff your feelings and not communicate. It's not going to ask that you, pressure or manipulate or try to maneuver your partner into doing something that really doesn't feel aligned for them, right? It's going to help you. It's going to help you come up with creative, higher caliber answers because it's going to need to be an answer that actually serves both of you. And that's why I love the model of like the relationship as its own, because it is kind of its own organic entity.
Okay, so I've never heard that before, and it's really interesting concept to me that I want to consider more. That two people coming together creates a third entity, which is a relationship. And you said something generously depositing into this sphere. What are the practical ways that we do that? Do we make a list of, I love when you do this? Do we, like, what does that look like? How do we do that?
Yeah. So I think this would look different. This would look different for every relation. So I'll just explain some of the things that I like. So I love cooking. Like I love cooking. It's something that adds variety to my day. It gets my eyes off of a screen. It feels creative. It's sensory. It's wonderful. My partner loves to receive cooking. If we were in a transactional model, right, we would be keeping track of how often I cook versus how often he cooks. And he actually has a lot of not a lot, but like sometimes it's challenging for he's like, gosh, she like cooks for me. I love cooking and but I'm not keeping I'm doing it because it's something I love to do. It's something that lights him up. And so it's just something that I deposit into our relationship, but I'm not keeping track, right? I'm just doing it because it's nourishing of me and it's nourishing of them. Trusting that the things that are nourishing, that is nourishing to him and that are nourishing, he will contribute. And obviously there's some communication that needs to happen. Like one of the greatest things I was like chores. I like doing dishes. I hate doing laundry. He doesn't mind doing laundry. Right. So if you're just coming from kind of like this textbook, like it should be fair, it should be equal, it should be split, then we would be like switching off versus me doing the lion's share of the dishes and then him always doing the laundry. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Right. Like, and that feels really good. It feels really abundant, and neither of us has to really keep track. Or even better, what if we have the cleaning person do the laundry? What? Right. Because like maybe both people don't like doing the laundry. Again, like what does the relationship need will help you come up with more creative answers for how to do that. As an individual though, like, so if you're on this call and you're not a couple, I think one of the things that can really anchor you to what does it actually mean to practice relational abundance is, I call it, like with my clients, I'll call it like the King's Covenant or the Queen's Covenant. And it's a set of agreements that you create with yourself for who you're committed to being as a partner that are not conditional on other people. So, because it's so easy to be like, oh, you're in a bad mood? Great. I'm in a bad mood. Oh, you got your feelings hurt? I'll show you who has hurt feelings. It's an almost instantaneous knee-jerk reaction. And I would say that if you, and again, this is like relational integrity, right? If you don't have agreements with yourself about who and how you are as a partner, then you are really sort of at the whim of the circumstances you're within versus being an active creator of the relationship you truly want. And so a great place to start, again, for people watching this, is start with like, what are some of the ways that you already know you don't show up as generously as you would like to? So for me, one of the things for me was like, if I got my feelings hurt, I would shut down, go super quiet, go off by myself, process, until I was like, I could communicate appropriately. Right. And really what I was what the dynamic that I was creating was I was basically communicating to my partner, I don't trust you with me. I'm not going to bet on our ability to handle this. I'm going to really I'm going to shut you out, let you know you're not welcome here. I'm going to let myself know that like my feelings aren't welcome. Right. And it was like, oh my God, this is not the dynamic I want. I want a relationship where like there's deep trust and we show up for each other in those moments of rupture or friction or confusion. And then even when we mess it up, we do it anyway.
Right. So this is deep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're in deep right now. And my hallucination is a lot of people listening may never have really thought about their ideal relationship vision of how they want it to be. They may have a blueprint of how they think it should be, but if you were to really step into a zone of creation and say, what does my heart really desire? How do I want it to be and look and feel? Now, James and I have done this many times because we throw ourselves in that ring. And a lot of it's very easy for a lot of it to stay on the shelf. Like when you get back to, work and kids and life, it's easy for old patterns to come in. So you really have to kind of fight for this. You really have to make this a priority. You have to schedule it. You have to do these exercises. So, I would wonder how many people have ever stopped to really consider, how do I show up in the relationship, and where in my patterns in the past, where have I not been that great? So you gave a really great real life example, which is my pattern too. Oh, I don't like where this is going. I leave and it's better until it's not.
Yeah.
And that drives James crazy, right? Don't leave because it's that's my old unhealed, whatever I still have floating around. Like you said, in my nervous system, my biological block, there's a trauma in the body, right? This is a real thing. So not only when we're coming together, we have our own triggers and emotional things that are stored in our body, and then someone else does. So I'm really getting your concept of you're creating a third, because both of this all plays, this all comes into play. So how where do we start at a really practical part? You know, I loved the idea of the Kings and the Queens covenant. Is that Alison Armstrong? Is that anything to do with that stuff? Like, where do we start if we really want to live our best relationship or attract our best relationship, as you're saying, for those that aren't yet in a relationship that may be seeking one? Where do we start with? What comes first? Is it the vision? Is it
always? It's always the vision, and very, very few people. I've not had a single. Maybe I had one person who came to me who was actually truly clear about what it is they wanted. So, and I think one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, if I gave myself permission to want what I really want, what do I want unedited by what I think is possible? So is really giving yourself, like, what do you want? And this is going to be a lot more challenging for the people who are currently in partnership, where there may be some dynamics that need some tending and some TLC. For people who are like, for people who are single, who are frustrated, I'm like, actually, you're in like the perfect spot. You're in the perfect spot to do this process, because you have all the freedom to really, really imagine this, because there isn't someone else in your space who you're going to constantly be checking. Well, like, would they want that? Would they be able to do that? Like, would they be willing to support me to do that? So it can be a lot stickier if you're in a relationship to get to that vision. It's totally not impossible. But again, you always kind of need leverage on yourself, which is understanding that your willingness to create that vision is also you opening that option up for your partner. But what you need is clarity of vision, and it needs to be a vision that is so true and igniting for you that you are connected to the fact that it deserves to exist. Because I think when you're just like, oh, it'd be nice to have somebody to like hang out with on Friday night, there isn't a lot of leverage there. But when I go through a vision exercise with somebody and they get really clear, not only does this beautiful relationship that inspires everyone who crosses its path, that is fulfilling to me, fulfilling to them, that adds value to my family, that adds value to their family, that is going to be this beautiful maybe they're a blended family, or maybe they want to have kids, or maybe they don't want to have kids, right? But like, it's going to be this beautiful ecosystem for children to get to see what like love and partnership gets to look like. You all of a sudden you have a lot of leverage, because it's not just about you. And also that person deserves to live this relationship. And you're the only two people qualified to create that partnership together on the planet. What? That's so exciting. So once you get connected to the vision and you give yourself permission to have clarity, then you actually know what the covenant is serving. I just say that because it's alliterative, right? And then those agreements in the covenant that you've created with yourself are sort of your touch points that help you make the new choice. So Linda, can
you give us some examples?
I'll give you an example of mine.
I want to know what's in the covenant. Like, give it to us.
So it will be different for each person. I'll share one of mine, and then I'll share one I think that you could start playing with.
Cool.
So for me, it was when I most want to shut down. That's when I do everything in my power to open or to be more present. And when I first created this agreement, it was like 5 days later when I realized that I would shut down. So it's also because, I had, however, 27, 28 years of practice of practicing being a different way. The old way of being was far more rehearsed than like all of a sudden I had this new idea. It's not going to change overnight. Like, you're going to be bad at it at first. Just, forewarn all of you, you're going to be clumsy because it's a new.
That's important to establish, right? It's the intention that you want this to do better. You want to feel better. You want to create better. So yeah. It will be. That was beautiful. I just got so emotional thinking about that then, because I can remember when it's just so much easier to shut down. Like before, I'm making an agreement for myself with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
For a greater, for a higher part of me as well. Not because I have to, and not because I should, and someone's telling me.
No, because you know what it is that you're here to create. You've connected to this thing that you're, this vision that you're creating, this partnership, right? um and you're like one of the two primary co-creators, right? So it's kind of like, if you got to show up with your whole palette of paints,
Yeah.
and be willing to keep it. If you ditch, then it's just a one person show.
Yeah.
Now my recall time is a matter of seconds, right? So the first time it was 5 days, and then I remember one time it took me about 15 minutes, because like, so I did something that bothered my partner, and his feelings got hurt, and then my feelings, and then I was like, oh, your feelings are hurt. No, and then like 15 minutes, I was like, oh my God, what are you doing? Right? Like, this is that moment. This is that moment. And so that's what's so beautiful about the agreements, is it helps you make a new choice versus just running that old unconscious pattern. And so now, like, oftentimes it's in a matter of seconds where I'll go, oh, I'll like, because the trauma, right? It's eased. It's not fully gone. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm shutting down. Okay, my agreement is to open. Okay, what would being more open be? It'd be like, it would be just showing what's going on, not punitively, not right. And so the last time this happened, like, I kind of started crying a little bit, and immediately my partner got up, came over, was fully present. It was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I shouldn't have used that tone, because he
Oh,
was feeling impatient, right?
oh, I love this. And this is hard work. I've got all this
Yeah.
stuff rising right now. So I'm just going, oh, what's the other thing that I know that I need to do, I want to do better in? Want to is
Yeah.
owning it, right? Instead of I need to or should. And so mine is saying sorry quicker and easier. I've gotten better.
Yeah.
But it's an observation that others have made around me. And, I'm kind of like Fonzie. I had a model growing up of someone that would never say sorry, like ever.
Mm.
I still don't think I've ever heard it. And I think of it, I can make it funny. It's like Fonzie. Do you remember the Happy Days? And Fonzie would go, so,
Mm-hmm.
so. He couldn't ever actually say it. That's how I feel when it's time to
Mm.
say sorry. But what's beautiful is I'm getting better, and the kids do it
Mm.
quickly and easily. James is a beautiful example of that, and I want to do much better there. So it's just making this real life. I would put that in my covenant, to open my heart easier and understand that sorry is forgiving me. It's being compassionate to me, and
Yeah.
it's allowing a safer space to continue. So they're
Yeah.
entwined, right? A lot of this stuff is entwined. If I'm shutting down, it's so I can avoid any of those feelings, right?
Yeah.
So they serve each other. Okay, I love the covenant idea. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think is one of the most common challenges that you see in relationships? Let's just talk intimate relationships. What do you think is one of the most common challenges that you see? And what's one of your favorite ways to help people move through it? Do you have any like things in your toolbox that's a very quick fix? Do you have some magic in your magic bag of tricks?
Yeah, I think so. It's the thing that came to mind, because I tend to work more with people who are single, and then helping them create, like, for me the metaphor is, I don't really want to come into an old decrepit house and do the reno. I want to help people build the house right the first time.
Yeah.
Right, like,
Well, maybe we could do both, because I know that that's going to speak to a lot of people if they're not yet in the relationship. That is a lot of your following for sure. Can we speak to that? And for those in a relationship, can we speak to that too? Just the one major thing that you feel that you see time
yeah.
again, and how to solve that.
What came up as far as like what was one of the dynamics that happens the most in partnership, it's linked to a lot of what we've talked about, but Gay Hendricks coined it as a race to the bottom, where it's that same thing, right? Like, your partner gets upset with you, and then you find something to be upset with your partner about. Well, they didn't communicate it in a way that worked for me, and now my feelings are hurt, right? And then they're like, well, like, I go and I try to communicate it, and then she wasn't listening, whatever, right? Blah, 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 blah. And so, and in that moment, what's happening is that someone needs to be more generous than they want to be. Someone needs to have what I would call the higher consciousness moment. And I would say, if you're noticing it, that could be an agreement with yourself. That's one of the agreements I have with myself, is if I experience a higher consciousness moment, if I see the game that we're playing, if I see us falling into a pattern that isn't creative, it's reactive, like due to my dedication to relationship, to partnership, I will be generous in that moment. I'm not going to be like, well, I did it last time. Right. I'm going to notice the pattern, and usually in that moment, it's like being curious and truly listening to the other person.
Oh, okay. I love that. And I love Gay Hendricks. He's the author of The Big Leap. Some of my favorite books.
Yeah.
And it kind of, Tony's, you know, the one quote of Tony is, do you want to be right or do you want to be in love?
Yeah.
And that can help me as well, because I grew up very, very righteous. So I you know, it's something for me that I want to temper. I love that advice. And so people looking for a relationship, what's the number one thing that you see there, and what's your advice?
Yeah. So people looking for a relationship, my advice is let your freak flag fly. So the thing I see the most is people watering themselves down because they don't want to seem like too much straight out of the gate. And what this actually is lying by omission. And I'm using that sort of provocative language on purpose. So for those of you who've dated online, how many people have you read who are like, I like hiking, tacos, and like good times with friends? Like, oh, great. Are you a human? Do you breathe? Like, right? Like, no, duh. That's like what everybody likes. And so when it comes to dating, and it's very important. There's a nuance to it, right? It's very important to be as truly you as you can be. And that means like really, like, I would say owning and leading with the things that either seem high maintenance or are deal makers or deal breakers, not in a defiant energy of like, prove that you're worth my time, because I see that as well, but it really is like, this is who I am. This is what I've gotten clear on that like makes me unique and makes me uniquely aligned for certain people on the planet. And I'm really excited to find one of those people to co-create life with, versus the chameleon where it's like, oh, that person doesn't like hiking. Well, I don't like hiking that much, or I'll just do it on my own. Right? Maybe hiking's not a deal breaker. For me, for example, Burning Man was really important. I was like, I need my partner to want to go to Burning Man with me. It's something I love doing. It's this like wild expression of humanity. And I just honestly don't think that I would do well in a romantic partnership with somebody that isn't excited by art, music, and adventure. Right? That might seem superficial to certain people, but I was really clear that was something that I wanted. So I would like lead with Burning Man as something that I love to do. Or I love to cook and I love to experience food. Being with a picky eater, I dated a picky eater, it really, really detracted from my quality of life. That is not going to do either of us any good over the long term. There is no scarcity of humans on the planet. There's no scarcity of quality humans on the planet. Statistically, it's impossible that there's a scarcity of good people on the planet, guys. Math. So what I'd love is for the people I'd love for everybody actually to be all in. It's like, be all in on the love story you want to create. Don't be all in on a person. Because if you're willing to do that and you're really, really willing to show up for the love story you want to create, you're going to attract, you're going to stand out to, you're going to connect deeper with people for whom that kind of love story seems really, really exciting to create. And they may just want a love story that looks just like that.
Okay, so there's some incredible stuff in it, because I'm thinking if I was single, and it's been a long, long time, that I've rarely been single for long parts of my life, to be honest. But if I was, that would feel very scary to be all of you, because it's even in our intimate relationships, it feels scary sometimes to own all of us, just even on the whole social media part. Like, this is really who I am. This is who I think that I should be. this is what I think people expect of me. This is what I think people like. And it's the highlight reel, and it's like the catalog. It's like, oh, people like this, so I'm going to say that about me. And what you're saying is, own all of you right up, just straight up, fly the freak flag, you said. And so you're going to these, you know, online dating. Okay, I'm going to see who this guy is. He's ticking all the boxes online. Let's see. And you're just like, do you like Burning Man? It's really important to me. So each of us has got parts of us that we know is just really important, and it's okay to make that a priority, even in the early dating.
So I think trying to make ourselves likable is why we have the divorce rates we do.
Oh, there's the big line. Trying to make ourselves likable is why
So usually what happens is two people meet each other and they present who they think the other person would like the most. And then there's this honeymoon phase where you're both on your best behavior for 3 months, 6 months, maybe longer. And then all of a sudden, the actual full-blooded person comes out, and there's two oftentimes quite different people in the relationship. And there's a whole negotiation that happens of like, well, do I still like this person? Right? Versus what if both people came forward and actually showed their full-blooded selves and were like, hey, here are like the unique things about me. Here are the things I really want to do. Here are the things that you like, I don't know, you may not like them, but like they're part of who I am. And like, I hope you do. But if you don't, then what are we doing here? There's already an expiration date built in if you have some of those things. There's already like a corrosive factor, or going to be a need to whittle yourself, or maybe possibly wanting them to whittle themselves down, right? So instead, if you're actually believing and participating and showing up for abundance, you trust that there are plenty of options of people who, like, think about it, who you are. Like, it's not been a challenge for me to like the things I like and go after the things I'm passionate about. Likewise, why would I think that would be challenging for somebody who's a really qualified match for me? I've just shown up hungrily for my life. So this is another thing that we do, is we're very, very demeaning to, like, I see this, I work primarily with women. So I see this with women where they want men who are really playing at the level in life that they are. And they feel like that's asking a lot. And I say that's really incredibly demeaning to men, to treat them as though they are not capable of showing up as hungrily or dynamically to life as you are. What's loving and empowering and trusting of men is thinking that that's an unbelievably reasonable request, and that there are lots of men on the planet who are showing up as hungrily dynamically to life, that are craving women who are doing the same. That's a far more loving and honorable way to approach one another. I don't know if I closed that loop.
Yeah, no, that's
a soapbox.
That's huge. That's just honest. And for women, because we get analysis paralysis. What's he thinking? And it's the funny rom-coms. It's the more sophisticated rom-coms now that are showing it like he's just not that into you. Dudes don't think about this stuff that much, you know. And when you were talking about, it reminded me of the Black Mirror episode of, there's a time of the relationship together, and it's right from the clock started. So how quickly are we going to get to the truth of who you really are and who I really am? And I feel that there's more urgency now, because, you know, women are focusing on their career, and relationships are really happening later. Or there's, you know, the post-divorce and separation and more relationships. So, you know, what I'm getting at here is there seems to be more time pressure on, can we just see really quickly if we're a match or not? And am I really bringing the real part of me to the speed dating? And what I'm hearing is that not everyone's bringing the real part of them. So just cut all of that, bring the real you and your vision, that you really, as you say, hungrily want in your best life, and trust and know that there's an abundance. Your partner is out there. What about life experience on the way? That not always going into the relationship as this is the one. Is this the one? So so you're taking kind of that desperation and that time clock away, which seems to be a big theme. How do you just show up and not care about the outcome? Or are you saying we really need to care about the outcome and guard that?
It's both. So for me, like I would say treat each person in front of you as though they're your spiritual practice partner. Because it's really like, there's two things happening. One is you're getting the opportunity to get in your reps. Are you showing up as the partner you want to be? Yeah, okay, you're on date number 2. You don't know if you like this guy and he said something that hurt your feelings. Well, when you're someone's wife, are you going to not tell them? Or are you going to invest in trusting them to be capable of doing that with you? Well, here's a perfect person who showed up in your life for you to practice that with. Because again, hopefully that is an agreement you have with yourself that's unconditional and that doesn't evaporate just because the person in front of you is somebody that you've only been on 2 dates with. If you do that in that moment, you're giving both people the opportunity to show up to say like, well, are we capable of having these kinds of conversations? Which is the exact information you actually need to determine if this is somebody who has longevity in your life. If they're not capable of meeting you in the complexity of that conversation, there's a really great chance that they're not a qualified prospective match. If they are capable of meeting you in that conversation, you'll experience more connectivity, you'll experience more intimacy, and you will have just navigated your first crunchy bit, which will engender more trust the next time something comes up, make you more capable of communicating. So it's a playground. It's a practice arena, whether or not you're going to go on one date with this person or date with them for 3 months. The other thing too is like, I don't know if my partner is going to be with me forever. I grew up in a home where my mom died when I was 10. Somebody could get sick. You could fall out of love. There's a whole, they might get pulled away. Maybe they're from another country and something weird happens and like everyone gets deported. I don't know. Like it's a crazy. So the other thing is like, even if you're married, I mean, and if anyone here has been divorced, being married doesn't even guarantee certainty. So it's important that you're not showing up for a relationship for certainty and for a guarantee. It's important that you're showing up for a relationship because of what you want to create with that person. And like I mentioned before, or I don't know if I mentioned this before, but is, hold on, I just went blank. Investing in people. So I really like to encourage people to look at patterns of behavior versus our impressions and the way we feel about people as the more important information for if we're going to invest in someone or not. If you don't like somebody, you're probably not going to invest in them. If you like somebody, how many people here have dated somebody and then 3-6 months in, you're like, I don't know if I'm like, right? I've done that. Yeah, everyone's like, it's because you invested in them because you liked them, not because you liked them and there was a pattern of behavior that really showed you who they were. So I think Maya Angelou said, believe someone when they tell you who they are the first time. I say believe someone when they show you who they are the first time. So pay attention to the way that people are showing up. If they're always late, I'm going to tell you right now, there's somebody who's always late. Right? Like, and then you get to decide, is that something that I could work with, or is that something that doesn't feel good to me? Obviously, like it's usually going to be like bigger, more important things. But anyone can be on their best behavior for 30. And this is not like distrusting them, right? It's like really giving someone a real opportunity, the space to show you who they are and vice versa, which takes more than 3 months. Like I am not one of those coaches that's like, get engaged in 6 months or less. I'm like, that's crazy. You don't know that person at all, right? Give it some seasons.
Yeah, give seasons. I love that. And when, as women, we believe in our influence to coach them to change, right? Oh, I can change that. can renovate that. I can, fix that. It's something that I definitely got out of a lot of the Tony Robbins teaching is no, do not coach our partners. Don't try and change them. Love what is. The Byron Katie work of loving what is, because it can be very destructive. Okay, so what's the number one thing that you find, to finish up here, the number one thing for women to know about men and then men to know about women? The one-liner.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, I'm putting you in, like, I'm challenging you on the one thing, the essence. If you could only tell one thing to men forever, this is what it is. And you can only tell one thing to women forever. And then you go to an island. And
we're so I don't like this exercise.
What you're prompted on, whatever you really are just prompted on.
Can I say something? I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to push back.
I totally want, break the rules, because that was
what I would really encourage. Your relationships can be traps, or they can be one of the most spiritually rewarding, fulfilling, like ever giving things in your life. Like it can be ecstatic. It can be like a spiritual playground for life, or it can be hell on earth. Oh my God. It can be though. Right. And so I think like if one of my missions is I want to do for relationship, like purposeful relationship, what Brene Brown has done for vulnerability. And that is to destigmatize working on it. And is like realizing that most of our education first of all, relating is a skill set. And most of us, our education is comprised of the media we've consumed, the family of origin that we were born into, and our own relational trauma profile. And that's where we're making our decisions from. And if you're willing to say like, maybe I don't know as much, maybe I don't know enough about this right now to truly create what I want, that will give you permission to become a student, to become a learner of like, what are the languages of relationship? Love languages, energetics of intimacy, nonviolent communication, all that stuff, right? Then you get to actually have curiosity around it, and you get to people are afraid to learn about relationship because everyone says this, love finds you and you're not looking for it, right? Or like they lived happily ever after. And so there's this fear that if I'm paying attention to it, if I'm thinking about it, if I'm concerned about it, I'm already doing it wrong. And I would say, if you're not thinking about it, if you're not paying attention about it, if you're not concerned, then you are doing it wrong, because it's too complex and too dynamic of a thing. Yes, some people stumble into it well. Some people stumble into it. Some people also win the lottery, but that's not how I'm going to build my wealth. It's definitely not going to be my wealth creation plan, because that's crazy. And so I like, if people walk away with anything, I'd love for them to walk away giving themselves permission that you weren't bequeathed with a really, you weren't bequeathed with a powerful education around this. And so what would it look like to empower yourself to educate yourself? Because there is a lot of amazing information out there. There's a lot of amazing teachers out there. I just think like the reward will be lifelong if you let yourself become a learner of relationships in this way.
I love that. Okay. Yeah. You escaped my question very well before you went to the island, only because we've run out of time. But okay. What I really love about what you said, and it's so true, we're not taught, we don't go to relationship school, and yet it's the most important thing. It's the most worthy mission of our life is to have and be and create and be fulfilled in our greatest love. And so it's such sound advice. What are some of your favorite resources for people who you've really touched today, saying, you know what, it is my this is my realm. You know, I'm on this call for a reason, and I've got some work to do in this. I'm waking up to this. Where do we start?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
This is the question you're most excited about so far. Relationship
I'm
book
excited
list.
because I literally have a book list that I created for people because I get asked this question all the time of like, where should I start? So I created like my go-to book, the go-to books that I recommend to my clients when they first start working with me to help them start to like explore some of these paradigms, to learn some of these languages, and also really expand what they know to be possible.
Yeah. Okay. So
for those listening, a book list.
I love it. For those listening, it's relationshipbooklist.com. Relationshipbooklist.com. It's one she prepared earlier for us. Look at her go. Yeah. Amazing. I have loved today. I want to have you back. We need installment number 2, the advanced version where we get even messier and we go even deeper. I've got so much out of today. A covenant for me to show up for the best version of me, first and foremost. That a relationship is an entity, which is just amazing. I also really love that, you know, what you finished on is we haven't been taught this. So let's go learn for ourselves, because it could be the greatest heaven on earth, or it can be like a hell. And you've definitely opened our eyes today. I'm so thankful for you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everyone, please come off